Hello, my name is Porter Anderson. I'm the editor-in-chief at Publishing Perspectives, and I want to welcome you to a very special conversation I've been looking forward to having with two of my favorite people in translation, one of our best companies, in fact, our biggest and most productive companies in the world of translation is with us today. Amazon Crossing is represented here by its editorial director, Gabriella Page Fort, and by Liza Darnton, who is senior editor. She's relatively new to me. We're all discovering her, and I've already had a wonderful interview with her. So I'm glad to be able to talk in person, as we're able to do, thanks to Zoom, and with you as you watch us at the Jack Tent Festival. We're glad you're with us. What we're talking about today is translation, how it can matter to your work, what it can mean to your work, and the kind of facility that Amazon Crossing offers to publishers and to authors who are trying to get their work to cross borders. This is exactly what this imprint of Amazon Publishing was set up to do. Now, when I say Amazon Publishing, I don't mean the self-publishing platform that's so famous, Kindle Direct Publishing. I mean an actual publishing house. If you're not familiar with this, Amazon Publishing has, it's either 14 or 16 imprints. These folks will know better than I do. And they're all really quite interesting. And it is a very big publishing house now. Some of us call it the Big Six because it is producing very strongly out of the United States, out of the UK, out of Germany. It's in many countries. And my favorite of the imprints is Amazon Crossing. It has a new children's wing called Amazon Crossing Kids, which we might hear about too. But Amazon Crossing has crossed its 10th anniversary and has produced more than 400 titles. This is why we now realize this is our biggest producer of translated material in the world today. And that's so important to publishing because in a world where it's difficult maybe to sell all the books you'd like, selling your rights and getting translated into other cultures is so important. Never mind the political reasons to be translated as far and wide as possible. So I'd like to start by asking Gabriella to tell us a little bit about herself and what she does with Crossing. Then we'll do the same with Liza. And then we'll begin talking about particularly the Asian opportunities for Asian work and for Asian practitioners in publishing with Amazon Crossing. Gabriella, talk to us a little bit about how you come to be doing what you're doing.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Pagefort. I've actually been with Amazon Crossing since we got started 10 years ago. I actually found my path to Amazon from a job in New York publishing where I was doing a jack of all trades type position at Continuum, which is now part of Bloomsbury. But translation was sort of a niche I was focused on from a young age, and I translate myself from French and from Spanish. So when Amazon Publishing decided that literature and translation was a priority, I leapt into the fray and have been blessed with having the opportunity to see the imprint through its first 10 years of its life. And hopefully I get to stick with it longer because I really think that day to day, Liza and I talk about this a lot, but day to day, the time we spend is time spent learning and time spent meeting new people and time spent discovering places we might otherwise live our whole lives without even thinking of, which is just such a blessing in a wild time where we're all stuck in our living rooms. Here we are in Jakarta. So Crossing in our 10 years has published, as you said, Porter, more than 400 books by authors from 44 countries, writing in 26 languages. Our authors represent 6 continents and every major adult trade category. Our primary categories for focus are literary fiction with mainstream appeal. We're really looking for those book club reads that leave you feeling connected to one another and to the world. We're looking for nonfiction stories that are page turners. We're looking for biographies and memoirs that have something we wouldn't have otherwise learned and that read again with that page turning fashion. But one of my favorite things about working with Crossing is that we're really all about connecting readers with books. And so when we're thinking about literature and translation, I think that is somewhat different from some of the other English language publishing houses, but it's actually quite similar to many of the other publishers around the world who are looking at international writers as a source pool of great ideas, great storytelling, great books for our audience. Thank you so much for having us today, Porter.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you so much. Liza, talk to us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Okay. So my name is Liza Darnton, and I'm from New York, but I grew up overseas. My father was a foreign correspondent for the New York Times, so I got to travel as a young child from very young. And we lived in many different countries, several countries in Africa, and also Poland and Spain and England. And so, very much a part of my identity has always been thinking about different cultures and where I imagine myself to be in other cultures and cross-cultural analysis. And that is one of the things that I still think is just endlessly fascinating. And now that I live in the US, I'm still chasing that feeling of being a foreigner in a foreign land through books rather than through actually being there. And it's a very strangely similar experience. And also kind of helping others to allow them to have that same experience. I think there's so much that one can learn about yourself and about humanity just by comparing and understanding your place in your culture and other cultures. I worked for a while at the Penguin Press in New York City, and specializing in nonfiction. And while at the Penguin Press, we did I worked on two translations. One, this was a while ago now, Wolf Totem, which some of you may know, and another one, The Girls of Riyadh. And I loved working on those translations, but there were only two. And now I'm really, really privileged to be able to work exclusively with translations. And I think it's a real, I can't imagine how I did it before without having had the amount of experience that we do it now. It really is its own sort of specialized thing. The translation piece is not a small thing. It's not an add-on. It's essential to the process. So I just feel lucky every day that I get to continue to discover new stories and new voices from around the world, and I'm eager to hear some voices from Indonesia.
Thank you. And I'll tell our audience something very clever you said, Liza, we were doing an interview for Publishing Perspectives recently. And one of the things you said was that when you're reading a translation, it's no longer just you and the author. You actually are aware of the translator there. And it's like a party in your head, you said. And I love that. I thought that was a very interesting way to look at it, because so often we all value the wonderful interaction with an author in our minds when we read. But when you've got another person in there, the translator, you really have got another intelligence working along. It's quite a marvelous way to think about it. I love that comment. Mm-hmm. What we ought to do, let's talk a little about translations that Crossing has done from Indonesia, because of course we're talking in Jakarta Content Week here, and many of our folks who are watching, I'm sure, will be aware of some of these authors and titles. There's Lakshmi Pamanjak, yeah? I think you have two of hers. Tell us about those.
Love her so much.
I think The Birdwoman's Palette came first, right? Was that the first of the
No,
two?
actually, The Birdwoman's Palette was the more recent release, and it was translated by Tiffany Tsao, who's also a brilliant writer.
Yes.
And she was a huge help to me. So Crossing, early on, we were trying to figure out, well, how do we diversify our network? How do we discover books from places that are not already available to us? And the Frankfurt Book Fair has this great concept of the guest of honor every year. And so from our origin days, we've been focusing in on the guest of honor to learn about their publishing sector, to meet people. You'll find that there are more people represented at the book fair from the country, from the guest of honor every year than there are on other years. And actually the year in advance, generally, there's a big contingent. And so we really focused in on Indonesia for the 2015 spotlight. And Lakshmi Pamanjak was actually the first author I discovered in researching that list, because John McGlynn had the full English translation of The Question of Red in hand that Lakshmi, the author, had done herself. And when you think about the party in your head, it's like, yes, she's the type of woman where you would invite 3 of her to the party if you could. Oh, yes. Yes. So actually you really feel that. And yeah, I personally, as an editor at least, can really feel the difference between when she's editing and translating herself and when she's working with another translator, with Tiffany Tsao. So that really is a great example, that A/B test of those 2 books by the same writer with different translators, of that hypothesis. But The Question of Red is like a sweeping, gorgeous book that gives you a sense of what happened in Indonesia's past. And it's told through just about the most beautiful love story with mythic roots and with just a tremendous and beautiful combination of history and setting and scenery and character, and also just originality in the way that the emotions are exposed. There, I think, is so much of the roots and origins of Indonesian culture in that book that I learned for the first time in reading that novel. So I'm extremely grateful to that book for sort of building my groundwork as we continue to develop a list.
Okay.
And so for that spotlight list, we also we chose a novel by Abida El Khaliqui, who is a Muslim feminist, and it's called Near-Zona, a love story, and it was translated by Annie Tucker. And it's set in the aftermath of the Aceh tsunami, and actually it sort of shocked some of our readers because they didn't know that the Red Cross is sometimes a good guy, sometimes a bad guy. The Original Dream is a surrealistic origin story, actually, of a woman who is also sort of an Eve-like figure, and it's by Nukila Amal, and Linda Owens translated it for us. That one is super close to my heart because it has some of that sort of French literature aspect that I love, of not knowing for sure whether we're in a dream state, whether we're on Earth, or whether we're somewhere that connects the two. And for me, that book really connects the feet on the earth to the clouds in the sky. And I think the bestseller actually from that cohort of books that we acquired was Paper Boats by superstar Dee Lestari, who I'm sure almost everyone watching already knows. She is such a gem. What a beautiful soul. And her novel writing is just about as accessible and catchy as her songwriting. And Tiffany Sao also translated that book for us. Um, we actually featured it in one of our Crossing World Book Day giveaways. Crossing World Book Day is a week-long promotion every April that we do to bring literature from the world to people of the world for free in celebration of the International World Book Day. And this is a very exciting giveaway for us because it is not centered around Amazon customers in the US. It's intended to bring audiences from all over the world. And we've been delighted by the international audiences that have come to read our books in translation within Singapore, within Thailand and South Africa. And the reach of the World Book Day reading is really remarkable. And we actually count the pages read as people are reading. So it's this really wonderful feeling that you're not just reading a book from Indonesia by yourself. You're reading it alongside millions of readers worldwide. And as you're discovering for the first time this author's work, so too are all of these people who might have nothing else in common with you at all, but we can connect around the books that we're reading.
I always love watching the ticker on the page during read the world promotion, because you can watch and the millions of pages are ticking up as you look. It's just incredible from all over, as you say. And one of the interesting things that I think we should point out here too is that Amazon Crossing doesn't just take non-English material into English. You also go into other languages as well, right?
We have a European team that's focused on translating into German, French, Spanish, and Italian.
Fantastic.
And they really emphasize the big blockbuster authors that we're publishing in any language. Sort of that's the core of the list of what that team is translating. But it is very nice to think about which books might work across many languages. For example, Turkish author Ayşe Kulin's book, Last Train to Istanbul, was a bestseller in English, and it was also a bestseller in German for us.
Fantastic. I love that facility and the fact that you've got that team doing that, because the development of those other cultures for the same material that we may be discovering for the first time in the English world is important. And this is how it can happen, not least because you guys are able to guide how this works with your own translators. You're working with translators from around the world, and you also have a portal through which people can submit material for consideration for translation, right?
Liza, you want to explain the portal?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. And I would encourage your viewers to make use of it. It's something that we take very seriously. It's sort of like a direct line to us. We are looking, Gabby and I and others are looking through that portal And sometimes we'll ask for more follow-up information and sort of take it from there. But the portal has been a great opportunity for us to continue to find new ways to find these books, because, you know, when you think about our mission and what we're hoping to do, we're hoping to find the best books, great stories in every country. And it's not easy to do. And we can go through all the usual streams, and we do, through publishers and agents and foreign rights professionals. But we also know that there can be silos in those particular streams as well. So we're doing everything we can to also get recommendations from our translators, and we get a lot of recommendations from our translators. That's another important way for us to discover new work. And then this portal, because that's the way that people can contact us directly, whether you're an author or a translator or an agent.
We even had hot tips from researchers, which is really cool. We can, you know, readers, anyone can make a recommendation. And because we're Amazon, we take every reader seriously, which I think is a blessing.
Yes, it is a blessing, especially to the readers. Indeed. Those of you watching, Gabriela has just put the link up while Liza was describing the portal to us, so that you can find it whenever you're ready. Jump in, grab that link and save it, so that when you want to come to them and talk to them about some material, you can get through. Liza, how many languages does the portal operate in now? How many languages are accepted there?
Well, we ask people to put their submissions into English.
Okay.
For us.
But Gabby, the site is localized. We have I think 14 languages that the site is localized into, so that if people don't have access to English, they can use the site in other languages. And then we work with our translation colleagues to bring those submissions into English for us to consider. And it's a very simple form. It's just like a high level information about the book and the author. So we're not asking you to submit materials through the site. We're just asking for a first pitch, so that we can look at 100 of them and have a lot of information to make our decisions about where we want to look for deeper analysis. And then we'll follow up with you by email in a sort of more traditional way.
And I will say, I should say, by the time it reaches us, it's in English, so we can read it.
That always helps. Yeah, that's certainly good for me, because I'm not as good at languages as you all are. Let's talk some more about books from Asia. Particularly Southeast Asia, that the Amazon Crossing has put together over the years. Can you name a couple? I'll name one of my favorite from China. Beijing is so fantastic. How many years ago was that? I met the author.
Was it BEA? I think it was 6 years ago.
Exactly, at Book Expo America, when it was still Book Expo America. It's changed its name now. At the Javits Center in New York. And we had a wonderful interview. And boy, what a great book that is. I've never forgotten it. It's just great.
It's pretty funny.
It is pretty funny. And it's a marvelous description of a younger generation at a moment when China is undergoing so much change. And there are parents wanting everybody to be a doctor, right? All children must be a doctor. And like my parents wanted me to be a doctor. And instead, of course, the younger people are trying to find their way forward as what they want to be. Fascinating experience reading that book. What are some more outstanding pieces from Asia that you can name for us?
Well, I'd love to tease a book that's coming out that will be coming out next year. The Tower of Bell and Drum. This is the working title. It may have a slight adjustment. It's coming out in a year and a half. And this is a book by Liu Xinwu, who is one of these authors who is just, known all over China, and many people in the US have no idea who he is because he has not been translated, in other countries as well, into English. And this book is an amazing sort of love letter to Beijing. And it describes a wedding, a preparation for a wedding feast. And all this sort of in a Siewan, which is a kind of living quarters. And it sort of goes and describes all the different characters who live together in this close living quarters, and kind of segues off into their lives. And then, but it's all focused around the preparation for this wedding feast. And it's translated by Jeremy Chiang, who is one of my all-time favorite translators. He's also a writer and a wonderful writer. He is I think originally from Singapore, and he is he's just done a magnificent job on this book. So I'm really excited for that one. We also we did very well with a translation of Jia Pinghua's book Happy Dreams, and we have another Jia Pinghua coming out, Shangzi Opera, and that's also coming out next year. Actually, that one's coming out in 2022. So we have a lot still coming.
We have a current bestseller from China too. Why don't you talk about Single Swallow?
We do. We have a Single Swallow, which Porter, you and I spent a lot of time, I think, talking about
yeah, we did.
In the past, which is by Zhang Ling, who is, she's Chinese living in Canada now. And it was originally written in Chinese, and a beautiful, it's doing really, really well. It's one of our best sellers. It's on right now. It's up right now. And we, this one, you know, these books take a lot of time. There's a very long editorial process. And there was for this book too, there a lot of work between the translator, in the case of Single Swallow, the author speaks English fluently too. So she was very much a part of the final editing, and she was very closely reading all of our edits. But the result was really magnificent. And many people have said in the comment sections, many people have said, you would never know this was a translation. It reads like it was written in English, which for you know, some of these books is kind of an accomplishment, because it's hard to have that kind of smooth flow from two such different languages.
It is. And I think Single Swallow, there's a parallel to that in my mind to the question of Red, because you're looking at history through love, if you will. History through a love affair. The one in Single Swallow might have 3 people, but nevertheless, there's that amazing way of telling a story about what happened at a certain moment in history in a certain place in the world through love and through affection and through the heightened emotions, of course, that come with that, with romance, that is very compelling and often works on you like good Hitchcock. It just gets right under your skin, you know. It's quite amazing. Yeah. I think that's, saying that too makes me want to remember to say something that if folks who are not familiar with Amazon Crossing, one of the things that might surprise you is that although Gabriella started with literary fiction, of course, which is what I like to read the most, one of the interesting things that Amazon Crossing has done is gone through all the genres. Unlike what we used to think of as what you had to take to a translation house, you know, it had to be very, very high level thought stuff. In fact, this can be very entertaining and very, very wide open genre into romance, mystery, thrillers. They're all there. And this is fabulous because it's helping us reach readers who might not want to go to literary fiction to try a translation, but they'll sure enjoy a good romance, or they'll sure look at a murder mystery, right? And here they are. It's just extraordinary, the range. This is something that's a little bit unique to Amazon's approach in that it understood very early, and this is thanks to Gabriella's genius, way back at the beginning, understood that people would come to a book that was a good story of the kind they liked, no matter where it came from. And it makes it possible to people like me in the media now to say to other publishers, don't be afraid to put a translator's name on the cover. They won't be afraid of it if it's a really good thriller. They're gonna read it, don't worry. And this has been great. It's been wonderful to see so many pieces take off that other translation houses might have shied away from because they weren't quite highbrow enough, right? It's cool.
Well, we have sort of an Amazon mentality, and at Amazon, everything is supposed to be working backwards from the customer. So before we can even consider bringing a book across under the Crossing imprint, we have to demonstrate the reader. Who is the reader? Where are they? What else do they like? And I think some of our biggest successes have been books that have literary quality and that are beautifully written and that interest a genre reader. So I'll mention another author from Japan, Keiichiro Hirano. And Hirano-san is this, tremendous star in Japan. He has this platform that's like at K-pop levels. He really gives you this deep philosophical satisfaction when you read his books. But each of his books is basically a literary novel following a genre convention, but they're different genre conventions each time. So last year we published A Man, which is a fantastic sort of noir story about identity, and it has a lot of depth to it, but that's the surface. And in 2021, we're very excited about At the End of the Matinee, which is a love story that is sort of a slow burn, and it has a lot of the qualities of Japanese minimalism that we're attracted to when we think about decorating our homes or when we think about finding peace in our lives, but within the framework of a love story, which I think is just such a beautiful combination. And I think it's you've zeroed in on something that we are really focused on, Porter, which is that across categories, what we're trying to find are books that in their original language are so beautifully written and so perfect that when you add a translator to the mix, what you end up with is something even more amazing, rather than an impossible puzzle, which sometimes also happens. And I think the idea of hearts and minds of readers, there's a lot of different ways that you capture the hearts and minds of people. But what we're really hoping to understand about a book when it's presented to us is, what is it about this book that just reaches out and grabs you and makes it impossible for you to turn away?
And if I could just add one more
Please.
genre to your list, also nonfiction. We're also more and more looking into nonfiction, and there is such a thrilling and rich possibility for nonfiction in translation. We've started with kind of the obvious ones, the nonfiction that read like novels with a story and a narrative arc, and we've done really, really well, and actually, frankly, better than we had expected with the memoirs and biographies that we've already done. And we are going to continue to look for those wonderful stories from people about people from different countries who lead these fascinating lives that are fascinating to all of us. And we're even perhaps going to start branching out little by little into other kinds of narrative nonfiction, to see what we can do there and what the possibilities are there, because it's very interesting and exciting, and not many people are doing that.
We actually had a New York Times bestseller with A River in Darkness, which is about Masashi Ishikawa's escape from North Korea. That book was originally published in Japan. And actually, I think we've got translations going. Our foreign rights team has had an amazing success selling this book. I think we've sold 10 languages, including a couple of Southeast Asian languages. So that book is probably on the horizon in a number of the audiences that we're with today.
I'm glad to hear. That's a very compelling and difficult read. Difficult because
Intense
it's
book.
intense. It's a very intense thing. Well worth it. Oh goodness, it puts you through a lot.
It can grab your heart without making you feel better at the end. That's I think there's an American concept that we can only handle happy endings, and I think that book proves it false.
Right, exactly. Although speaking of, we like happy endings in the American culture right now, particularly. And one of the things I've been nudging Liza and Gabriella about, whenever they say nonfiction to me, I go, good, political books, where are they? Because of course, journalists were all in political books all the time. Political is a little difficult because of course it changes quickly with time, particularly in the current environment. But there are wonderful political overviews and things that I would love to read from other cultures that have never been brought into English, because the initial thought has been, well, no one in another culture, particularly English, would want to read about our politics. Not at all true. We are becoming, particularly in the English language markets, we're becoming more and more curious and aware of other cultures' interests in their literature, because we're becoming more and more aware we need to be, we have to be. We need to open up more, and translation is the way to do it. It's the gateway.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just took all the words right out of their mouths at that point.
Well, absolutely. And, there's also, don't forget, there's also politics that come out through novels. And we have, and in fact,
very true.
Sometimes in very interesting ways. One of the most interesting places to look for really interesting and new literature are countries that are in which the writers are having to play with how much they can and can't say in a novel. So they're sort of forced to be creative, and that's where you get some really, really fascinating kind of stories with all kinds of nuances and layers. And you know, we did a book called The Girl in the Tree by a Turkish author, which is very much that kind of a book. Şebnem Işıkgüzel, who she was, her main character was talking about, you know, the disruptions from the Gezi protests and so on. And kind of how that affected her life. And it was made up, but it was all real. And we have a book coming out called Two Spies in Caracas, which is by Moises Naim, who you might know from the nonfiction book, The End of Power. But he's written a fiction book about, you know, that takes place in Venezuela. So we're gonna sort of be transported back to Venezuela and be able to kind of see through fiction, but there is quite a lot of politics that is kind of, you can't avoid.
I was going to say, if you're going to Venezuela, you're going to politics. So
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Fantastic. I can't wait for it. This sounds really, really good. This is great. What a good talk this has been too. I want to thank you both. It's been wonderful to have this time with you and to hear this much about what Amazon Crossing is doing. I want, as we come to our last few minutes here, I want to ask Gabriella to tell us about the logo. This is a very new logo. It was introduced last year at Frankfurt when we were all still together at Frankfurt in 2019. And there are two versions of it, one for the regular imprint, Amazon Crossing, and one for the kids. Tell us about the bird that we see in that logo, Gabriella. I love this.
I loved it when you said that we had a new wing with Amazon Crossing Kids, because our new logo is an Arctic tern. And the Arctic tern. I didn't even know
I'd pull that pun, you see.
Yeah, you're good at it. It comes naturally.
It does. Yes.
So the Arctic tern is the bird with the largest migration distance of any animal. So the Arctic tern sees it all from a bird's eye view. And right now the Arctic tern is hovering over Southeast Asia and letting everyone on the line know that we've not ever published a book by an author from Vietnam or Thailand. We have one Malaysian book that was written in English by Selena, or one series by Selena Siak Chinyok. But in addition to literature and translation, Crossing is also now looking for English language books written abroad, specifically books that are representing hard to reach cultures. And so when you think about some of these areas where English is the lingua franca and English is the language of publishing, that has been a space we've struggled with in the past, and now we have very clear room for it. So we encourage your submissions in the English language as well, and especially picture books for kids. Marilyn Brigham, our editor for Amazon Crossing Kids, is a beautiful human being. She really loves picture books with strong emotional content and with strong character representation. And she's got a mission aligned with ours to bring books from everywhere into English for kids everywhere. So we very much feel like while we are at work every day, we are the Arctic tern soaring over the planet, having a look around, identifying the interesting pockets and taking some time to delve deeper.
I love that. I just love, because I didn't even know the Arctic tern was the bird who flies the farthest and is in the most parts of the world. It's just an incredible thing.
This is why tech companies are fun. That idea came from Brandon Lyle, who is a software engineer and a beautiful person who really puts a lot of energy and creativity into the World Book Day vision. Right. And he is the person behind a lot of our technical solutions. So huge thanks to Brandon.
And Brandon knew the tern. This is incredible. Yeah. So now the next time you're talking to somebody and you're telling them about Amazon Crossing, you can point to the logo and you can say, what bird is that? And you will know, and you can explain it to them. It's wonderful because she flies around the world to see the best literature everywhere. I love it. This has been great talking to both of you. Thank you, Gabriella Page-Fort. Thank you, Liza Darnton. And thank you to our audience for being with us on this. We hope we've given you some good ideas about what might happen with some of your own material. Remember that the link for the portal to reach the folks at Amazon Crossing is in the chat there if you need it. And I hope you're enjoying the festival. Enjoy Jakarta Content Week. I'm Porter Anderson at Publishing Perspectives. Join us 5 days a week. We are a free site and we cover nothing but publishing around the world. So be with us and we'll keep you informed. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mengawali hari dengan informasi terkini, menjadi sumber referensi dan inspirasi di setiap aktivitas. Melalui news video portal, segala informasi dapat disajikan cepat, akurat, dan lengkap. Dengan kekuatan teknologi digital, Medcom.id hadir dengan berita pilihan yang dikemas secara menarik. Medcom.id, digitally inspire people.
Sudah 15 menit, masih kejebak macet.
Tenang, daripada emosi, 15 menit Anda jadi lebih berharga kalau bersama saya.
15 Minutes, setiap Rabu, jam 6 sore lewat 45 menit. Mediaindonesia.com hadir dengan opini cerdas dan narasumber kredibel, mudah diakses, informasi berkualitas ada di genggaman Anda. Klik di browser Anda, www.mediaindonesia.com. Dan temukan pandangan berbeda, karena fakta bisa sama, sudut pandang boleh beda. Mediaindonesia.com, views and news.
Dalam setiap denyut kota, saya selalu menjadi saksinya. Disiarkan lebih dari 20 televisi jaringan Jawa Post Group. Jawa Post TV, paling Indonesia. Kebebasan pers dan gelombang era digital menghadirkan ribuan bahkan jutaan informasi dan data setiap harinya. Beragam data dan informasi berserak di berbagai tempat seiring dengan perubahan dunia yang bergerak begitu cepat. Media-media baru pun bermunculan, namun kualitas informasi seolah tak lagi menjadi prioritas. Bahkan, tak sedikit yang abai pada etika jurnalisme. Untuk menjawab tantangan itu, Kata Data hadir sejak April 2012 sebagai portal media di bidang ekonomi dan bisnis. Beragam sektor diulas mulai dari finansial, energi, pangan, hingga industri kreatif dan digital. Artikel mendalam dan komprehensif dengan sajian infografik yang menarik menjadi karakter utama dari Kata Data. Kata Data berikhtiar untuk terus menyajikan beragam informasi berkualitas untuk kemajuan negeri dan untuk kepentingan bisnis Anda. Kami percaya demokrasi yang sehat tumbuh dari kehadiran informasi dan data yang akurat.
Kalau bicara pakai data.
Hidup terlalu pendek untuk membiarkan pemikiran-pemikiranmu, ide-idemu terdiam begitu saja. Untuk berubah, kita perlu melangkah. Dan langkah itu lahir dari sebuah inspirasi. Republika, start moving.